We have two rituals that mark the beginning and the end of the church year. The church year sort of corresponds with the school year. We start the year with the merging of the waters, and we end with the flower communion. And this feels fitting because so many of us find our spiritual grounding in nature, and our faith tells us that we are all interconnected, not just with one another, but with the wide universe that we all sang of. So I usually tell the story of the flower communion during that service. I love that story. It's a way for us to kind of connect to earlier Unitarianism and to the thread of history and theology that continues today. And I found some history on the water communion service, and I thought, well, maybe that would be fitting for this service, since I'd never actually read any history about the water communion. Most of what I'm sharing today comes from the Unitarian Universalist Association's website, and then from there's a great Harvard historical archives. If any of you are history geeks, feel free to check that out on Unitarianism. So Chad's going to be part of the help of telling this story. So in 1980, two Unitarian Universalist women, Carolyn McDade, who wrote Spirit of Life, that we sing together quite a bit, and Lucille Shuck Longview, were asked to create a worship service for a Women and Religion Continental Convocation of Unitarian Universalist. And as they shaped their service, McDade and Longview wanted to create a new ritual that spoke to our interconnectedness to one another and to the totality of life and to our place on this planet. They included a new inclusive symbol of women's spirituality, which was water. They write, "Water is more than simply a metaphor. It's elemental and primary, calling forth feelings of awe and reverence, acknowledging that the ocean is considered by many to be the place from which all life on our planet came," especially by many Unitarian Universalists. It, they said, is the womb of life, and that the amniotic waters which surround each of us prenatally. We now realize that this worship service was for us a story of a new creation. We choose water as our symbol of empowerment. So the November service was held in East Lansing, Michigan, and was called Coming Home Like Rivers to the Sea. And its creators, McDade and Longview, enacted the ritual in liberating space of a semicircle, see, we got that going on, around a large earthen bowl. We don't have a large earthen bowl, but Katie did bring an earthen bowl. They asked 8 different women, each coming from distant places, to bring water, and they did. Water from Rio Grande, from the, Chad will pronounce the rivers later, rainwater from Maryland, water from the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, and others were poured into the earthen bowl as each bearer described its significance. As the ritual continued, says Carolyn McDade, water deepens in meaning for us, just as water deepens during its long and winding journey to the sea.
Just going to add that I just took a UU history class, and the last set of readings was about this.
Oh, how awesome is
So
that?
I opened this last night and thought, hey, I kind of know this. So the water ritual was an important part of the feminist movement inside Unitarian Universalism and is closely related to the development of the current Unitarian Universalist Association's principles and purposes. In 1975, Lucille Shuck Longview, a devoted member of the UU parish in Lexington, served as the UU delegate to the United Nations Women's Year Assembly in Mexico City. And she returned from that assembly convinced that religion, even her beloved Unitarian Universalism, was a chief culprit in the perpetuation of oppressive sexism. Back in Lexington, she gathered support and authored what became the Women and Religion Resolution, passed at the annual Unitarian Universalist General Assembly in 1977. That resolution called for an extensive examination of the sexism inherent in religious literature and institutions, beginning with the Unitarian Universalist Association itself. UUA President Paul Carnes, guessing he probably wasn't Latino, but I almost went with Carnes, put together a committee to work on the resolutions, and districts were encouraged to support related women and religion groups. These groups quickly noted the necessity of rewriting the original 1961 UUA's purposes and principles which used male-gendered language to express the concerns and dignity of mankind, and which failed to address the care of Mother Earth as a religious priority. In 1985, the principles and purposes we've known for many years were passed by General Assembly, complete with the inclusion of respect for the interdependent web of existence as a new principle. That, by the way, was the principle that drew me into Unitarian Universalism. Those of you who heard Kathy Bierich speak a few weeks ago, or who are following what is happening in our denomination, know we are currently in the process of reimagining our principles and purposes. As an evolving faith, we are committed to keeping our core purposes and beliefs current, reflecting how society changes over time.
The path from Longview's 1975 experience with the United Nations to the General Assembly in 1985, 10 years, you guys, was long and difficult. In between those two benchmark dates, there were countless meetings and conversations and worship services that served as profound spiritual explorations of the sought-after transformations. We'll be doing that this year with Article 2, the same kind of thing with a lot of conversations. The service I spoke of earlier, Coming Home Like Rivers to the Seas, was the inception of our service today. The water ceremony became a central part of the religious service that broke within the tradition in significant ways. It was created by lay women who had long been silent in the pews. The ritual space was also made sacred by the women themselves. We gathered, this was actually Carolyn McDade speaking, we gathered to worship in a way that was authentic and liberating to us, not as a church, but as a semicircle around a large common earthen bowl. It was a ritual of women being connected by a universal symbol, water. A ritual of women being connected by the totality of life. Here is the exposition of the theme from inside the worship itself. Making our way like rivers from places distant and near, we come together to give shape to a new spirituality. For there is no theology that calls women to strength rather than to support the strength of others. That calls women to action rather than to passivity. That calls women to full expression rather than to meek acceptance. Recognizing we must question every box, every definition, every assignment from an authority outside of our own beings, so we can create and recreate for ourselves the rituals and the symbols that give meaning to us. So we come together to question, to hear, to share, to speak, to inspire, and to celebrate through new rituals, knowing that our energy and love are transforming. Celebrating now our connectedness, we choose water as our symbol of empowerment. As rivers in cycle release their waters and regain new beginnings, so do we cycle. For us as women, these beginnings are powerful but not easy. But we still come together to create and celebrate and to live by the spirituality worthy of our devotion, a spirituality that uplifts, empowers, and connects.
Just like in contemporary water celebrations, different participants had been asked to bring to the service water that held special meaning for them. Those waters were then commingled as the women shared. Unlike many contemporary celebrations, however, the original ritual noted that it was important for those participating to have the opportunity to take some of the commingled waters home. Indeed, they invited the women present to empty out any bottle of cosmetics or perfume that they might have brought with them and to use that to convey some of the water home, thus abandoning a product that exploited perceived feminine inadequacies to make room for that which might remind them of their shared power. But most of all, persons accustomed to the current practice of water celebrations might be surprised by the depth of sharing that took place as the waters were mingled. Here is an example of what one participant shared as she poured her water into the common bowl. This is from the typescript from the original service. Assiniboine River in Winnipeg, Canada, by Jean Bramadette? I don't know, that could be French. I bring water from Canada, from the north, from the prairies. This water comes from the Assiniboine River, which ultimately flows into the Hudson Bay. The water from this river is very important to me because I live on this river. It is almost an extension of my living room, and constantly observe the changes. Sometimes it flows fast and sometimes slowly, quite a bit like my own moods and my own life. I have listened at night to the boom and crack of the ice floes breaking as winter turns into spring. I have watched helplessly as a man drown in the fast-moving waters before me. I have observed the blue herons receiving sustenance from its banks. I have enjoyed the river in all seasons, skating in the winter, canoeing in the summer, but most of all, the river is a symbol of the lasting power of life. The physical part of me may die, but like the river, my spirit will live on.
So as in-gathering services seem to mark the recommencement of the church calendar suspended for the summer, many people assumed that this must be a very old tradition from the 19th century. It seems like actually the guess from Susan Ritchie, who is a beautiful historian in our tradition, she thinks it actually may have come from the more modern hybrids of a New England autumn harvest festival. Because the Harvest Festival is actually called an in-gathering, and from local college and universities' homecoming tradition. So it really actually just sort of blossomed more in the 1980s. I'm going to let Chad move into the water communion service. I have you as a very small font, so you may want to get yours, or we can turn it sideways and make it bigger.
Scroll, scroll, scroll. Whoa. Stop doing what I told you and do what I meant, computer. There we go. We here at Michael Servetus Unitarian Society and other Unitarian Universalists across the country have been celebrating merging of the water service, also known as the water communion, for many years. Today we recognize that water, wherever it comes from, is sacred. It is a gift we can't create and cannot live without. We will start the ritual with people here in person. In a minute, we will have each of you come forward as individuals or families. Bring your water forward, pour some into the common earthen bowl. As water is poured into this bowl, it represents our interconnected community and the merging of our lives. Water is gathered from places near and far. Mindful that some of us have the resources to travel and others do not, although we want to hear where the water came from, the focus is on what its source is in your heart. What does the water represent? Before you bring the water forward, think of your answers to these questions. What is special about this water? What memory does it evoke? What does it call you to be? For instance, does it remind you of your morning shower when you do your best thinking or singing? Does it bring a memory of sunsets? Does it call you into relationship with loved ones or to work for environmental justice? It is the deeper meaning and symbolism of the water that is the universal story we share today. If you forgot water, don't worry. We have a pitcher of Fridley's tap water for you to pour in as you share your reflection on the place in your life where water comes to mind.
You could spit in it.
Oh, that's nice, Polly. You may have to repeat that so people...
Polly says you could spit in it. I'm not entirely endorsing that, but I guess I'm not going to jump in and stop you. So, here again are those questions. What does the water remind you of? Polly's brought whole new questions to mind, or answers to mind. What does it call you to be? Who does it call you to be? What is special about the water you brought? You may now come forward and you can speak or not speak as you pour. If you do speak, please introduce yourself and be mindful of the time so everyone can share if they choose to. If you have a lot of water, feel free to just pour a bit into the bowl. It's not that big a bowl, and we have to carry it when we're done.
And is there a mic? We got a mic.
And so I invite you, the brave soul who wants to go first, to come forward. I find that these things start to, as it were, flow once they get going. Come on.
Since I have the mic, I'll start, if that's okay with you. So this water is from Martin Lake, east of Cloquet. It represents to me a wonderful weekend spent with Kate and dear friends. Great food. Paddling over the glassy surface of this lake is like flying over a beautiful forest of underwater plants. It was gorgeous. We awoke to a floating island blocking access to the dock, so I got to spend just a lovely afternoon as an adolescent moving that island with nothing but a kayak and a really long stick. It was great fun.
Do anything quite so. Anyway, in the past, I have come because my beloved Mississippi would provide the water. But since I can no longer drive or get around, this comes from the Mississippi via Fridley Sanitation Department. So whoever's next. Oh, okay.
Poof, this is now Detroit River water. My eldest nephew and niece, born too late to be real hippies, but they are hippies, live near the Detroit River, which has Canada right across the way, and Lake Erie that takes it into the Atlantic, where Jeff and I did a transatlantic cruise last winter.
This is Lake of the Woods water in Ontario, so it's also Canadian. And it's where we have our cabin, and we go swimming and fishing, and wonderful.
We have Mississippi River water through Fridley also. But for all the state parks we visited that all have water, some of it gathered by men in created lakes, some flowing in the rivers, but being part of the ecology of our state and reminding us to care for that ecology.
This water is from Lake Superior, where Lois and I find a great deal of peace, even on days when the lake is riotously fierce.
As with Byron, this is also from Martin Lake, from a spring that feeds the lake, and for me it is reminds me of how water invites me to rest.
Hi there, my name is Aaron, and this water is from our home. It's what we use to mix with Matilda's food. It's what we use to give her via her feeding tube. And to me, it represents the life of our daughter and the difficulties that she's gone through and all the opportunities she's had to show us the joys of life.
My name is Jennifer, and this is from our tap in St. Paul. It's the first thing I drink in the morning and the last thing I drink at night. And as St. Paul has requested, we don't water our lawns because the water levels are dropping. It's very precious.
This is from Lake Superior, and Bruce and I were up there. We go there once a year. It's one of our favorite places to go. It has helped our gardens, whether it's from Lake Superior or not. It all ends up coming from the same source, and we need to take care of that source much better than we have.
My name is David. This is sky water. It is part of the rain that fell yesterday afternoon, and so it represents the distance that water travels to come to us and the entire cycle of life that water holds within it.
This is tap water from my home in Columbia Heights. I know I take it for granted a lot, but I'm very grateful to have it.
This water is representative of water from the Pacific Ocean. I had the pleasure of snorkeling and off of Oahu last month, able to see the coral and the fish and 2 amazing spotted eagle rays. This water inspires me to social action because my favorite marine biologist said to me, "Mom, I've got all I can do to save the environment. Somebody has to help the people."
This water is representative of the marsh that bordered the property where I grew up. A marsh that housed frogs and herons and geese, and the ecology of my hometown, a place that represents for me transition and growth and healing from trauma.
I'm Richard, and this water is from Sucker Creek in Vadnais Heights. The reason it's important to me is the Sucker Creek Park is where we spread my son's ashes this summer.
My name is Lori, and this water is from Portage Lake, which is the lake that our cabin is located on, and it represents a place of solitude and peace, and also it represents chaos, as it's a place where people and family come to recreate together, and it also is a connection to past generations or past family members, as it houses the land houses the ashes of my dad, my mom, and my nephew. So it's a very significant location.
I'm Alan. This water is St. Paul tap water, but it represents the water that is missing from the streams in the woods of my youth.
My name is Sawyer, and this vessel of this Fridley tap water will represent the headwaters of the Mississippi, where I spent a weekend with some friends a couple weeks ago.
My name is Neil, and this water will represent water from Springbrook Nature Center, where people come to play and enjoy nature.
Hi, I'm Amy. This is going to represent waterfall water
I decided I was having a waterfall summer, saw as many local waterfalls as I can, so that's energy and joy and chaos and loudness.
I didn't want to go last, but oh, good. This water, which is kind of funny, is from Lifetime Fitness Lap Pool. It's chlorinated, and that might help.
It can't hurt.
But what it represents to me is a huge journey that I've taken. I wasn't gonna cry. My realization of my food addiction and the impact on my life. Hours and hours of exercise in the pool so I could exercise with my rheumatoid arthritis. And it's finally, for me, provided a time where I look in the mirror and I like what I see.
And now, those of you who are online and have water you'd like to show us, just raise your hand and we will unmute you.
I will share. Beth Strootman wrote in the chat, so I will read what she wrote, and then I see Janice was holding up some water. So Beth Strootman writes, in this time of climate worries, including our current drought, I was thinking of rain as the source of all of our waters collected here, but then thought, no, there isn't a beginning source because it's a cycle, and precipitation is just one part of that. Anyway, I set out a bowl to get rainwater and sadly collected only a small amount. That tells a story. Or better yet, there's a lesson in that from nature. Nature is a great educator, really our first and longest and perhaps most important teacher. We can and must learn a lot from her. We just need to pay good attention.
I'm Janice, and the water that I'm holding up came from the Pacific Ocean, Moonstone Bay in California. It represents seeing my daughter and son-in-law for the first time in 6 years. It represents a day that was wonderful on the beach, collecting rocks, on all the various kinds of rocks that represent many of the different races of our world, because all those rocks coexist on the same beach. And it's a wonderful feeling and reminds me of the importance of family and joy with family, and that there is a possibility that everybody can get along. Thank you.
Is there anyone else online? We will boil this water, so whatever might be living in it and cause harm to human bodies, despite the addition of the chlorine by poly, will be gone and the water will be safe for us to use. In many churches, holy water is blessed by priests. It is an ancient tradition where common water is believed to become holy because a person ordained in a religious tradition makes it so. Not so much us. We start with the premise that water is, by its very nature, sacred. Just as we make this place holy by our presence, we make water holy by our shared blessing. This water that we have blessed together this water that we have blessed together will be used when we dedicate children, or if people here are sick or dying and want a water blessing to remind them of this faith community's love. As we bless this water, we will read the responsive reading on our screen. If you are in person, please stand in body or spirit and read the parts in italics. We encourage those of you at home to read along as well. This water is sacred. It is made sacred by the many hands that have poured it with intention and love. The many stories that each drop contains, the many lives surrounding it in this unique moment, committed by commitment and faith. This water is sacred. May it continue to flow through this community with shining reflections of the unique gifts that flow through each of us. This water is sacred.
May it continue to nurture this community with sustaining hope that we journey together through ripples of growth and change.
Water is a blessing. May it continue to bless this community with loving reminders of our collective responsibility to one another and the world. Water changes and transforms over time.
May its ripples be a reminder that the changes and growth within this community bring movement and transformation to the world beyond our doors.
Water can restore. May it offer grace to our community and the willingness to forgive ourselves and one another when we make mistakes. Water is lucid.
In moments when we are confused or uncertain, may it bring us clarity of purpose and commitment.
Water sustains us. In moments when the reservoirs of hearts and spirits are drained by sorrow or pain, may it nourish them with the knowledge that we are surrounded by a deep and abundant love. This water is sacred.